Hi, come in. Welcome to Fashion Neurosis, Sam McKnight.
Thank you, lovely to be here.
Can you tell me what you're wearing today and why you chose these particular clothes?
Oh, I'm wearing a Fred Perry top, of which I have probably hundreds, and it's quite warm outside, so I'm into the first short sleeves of the summer, and I wanted to be comfortable lying down on the couch and not wear anything too bulky. And I'm wearing my lovely, comfortable Uniqlo sweatpants, which is a kind of uniform for me.
Yeah, I was eyeing those up actually. They're a very elegant shape.
They're great, aren't they? They're
Yeah.
great, and they're about 30 quid or something, so yeah.
Oh, I'm going to get some. How did you go from growing up in a mining town in Scotland to becoming the top hairdresser in the fashion industry for maybe 40 years? Is that right?
Well, it's actually 50 years this year. Yeah, this is my 50th year of being a hairdresser.
Incredible.
Yeah, I know, I just said it out loud. I'm from a mining village in the southwest of Scotland called New Cumnock. It's like a little council estate dropped into the beautiful green hills of southwest Scotland. I went to teacher training college when I was 17 or 18. And it was all very exciting. I was going on to further education, and it was at that time when university courses and further education started to be open to, children, teenagers of all classes. Before, it really had only been the kind of select few that got to university, but things were changing. It was the early 70s, and I was the first person in my family to go to university. I did 2 years of teacher training college first because that was close to my home. And then the next 2 years were going to be at university in Glasgow. But by the end of year 2, I had had enough. I was fed up being in the education system. I was bored. I felt like I wasn't really learning anything. I was just learning to pass exams, and I wasn't very good at exams, and I knew I wasn't going to do well. And I had done really well at school always. This was a big change for me to start not enjoying what I was doing. So I my family didn't have any money, but my dad's a coal miner, and my mum worked in the co-op, and so I always had jobs. I did window cleaning. I worked at a sock factory. I worked in a jeans factory. I did all kinds of things to get pocket money, basically, during the school holidays, in the evenings. And I had an odd job working for some friends who owned a hairdressing salon, or a few hairdressing salons. They owned a disco. They had a burger bar. It was early 70s.
Yeah.
I gravitated towards the hairdressing salon, I guess because people were fun, and that was the beginning of my kind of life in hair.
Because hair salons in the early days, they were like hothouses for young people trying to connect with fashion, and it was such a big deal, the local hair salon, and that changing. And what were people wearing then, and what did you wear when you went into work?
I think back then by the time I started doing odd jobs in the salon, I had been wearing huge platform soles. I mean, I'm talking huge platform soles I think that went on for about 3 or 4 years in the early 70s.
Good. I love
By 75, we were turning towards Americana. It was becoming more. I remember having a Catherine Hamnett jacket that I bought in Miss Selfridge. It was a girl's jacket, but it was a safari jacket, kind of army jacket, basically. And I remember buying a pair of Smith's jeans, Smith's sort of painter's jeans. I think they were red. Yeah, they probably were red. They were red. Yeah.
I think.
So we were heading into bomber jackets and Americana by then, but we were coming out of that kind of glam rock of the early 70s into the Americana and kind of disco of the mid 70s. And I had discovered discos a couple of years earlier, and I discovered the Philadelphia sound, you know, sort of black American music, which I'm still addicted to this day.
God, those platform shoes were such a thing. I remember going to a jumble sale and buying these really high platforms because my mum wouldn't let me wear anything apart from desert boots. And I had size 4 feet and these shoes were size 8. And I'd carry them in a bag and put them on. And they were really ugly and I knew it, but it was I'll never forget them. I mean, this is so long ago now, and they had so much gravitas, and it was such a thing, wasn't it?
It was, and I remember my prize pair were black, silver, quadruple sole with a wooden stack heel, and they were lace-ups, and I remember they were £26. Now, I think my mum and dad probably would have been horrified if they thought I'd spent £3 on them. So I never told anyone how much they were. Luckily, it was my own money because I earned my own money. And it was the most expensive thing. I mean, it was crazy. It was probably £1,000 in today's money. It was crazy, but I loved those shoes.
Yeah. God, did you have an obsession about anything, any particular clothes when you were a child that you just felt you had to have?
In the 60s and 70s, from when we're children, even now, we like our fashion, right? And we like our tribes, and we like to belong to this one or that one. And I was a Beatles fan when I was a kid, and then I was a T-Rex fan. And then, of course, like everyone in my generation, we discovered David Bowie. So everything was about copying David Bowie. I had a very, very happy association with fashion since a very young age.
God, that's so nice.
Because fashion and music is intrinsically linked,
totally,
isn't it? Or it was.
No, it was maybe more than it is now, isn't it? We look to those pop stars and rock stars for an image and how to sort of start experimenting with identity.
Well, we idolize them, and you identify with someone. I think it's deeper than image, isn't it? It's an identification. You think, oh, there's someone that I can see a bit of me in. And I think that's a really sort of quite an intoxicating realization when you're a teenager.
Yeah. I know. I went to a school, when you say you had a happy association with fashion, I went to a Steiner school where fashion was just regarded with absolute sort of contempt and bemused patronizing. So of course it was so difficult to be interested because you felt absurd, you know. And then this girl came into my class when we were 12, I think, who come from London, called Rusty. And she was into David Bowie, and she had these great clothes, and she was so pretty. And she had like dyed her hair and everything, and we just couldn't believe it. And she was so fantastic that it was like a spell had been broken. We woke up and was like, oh my God, that's what we're missing. We need to be part of life. And Rusty's showing the way. And she became my best friend. And she was, the whole David Bowie, she sort of introduced me to David Bowie. And he seems to have had such a big influence on anyone who's interested in fashion.
Well, that music and fashion mix is really, it's quite a heady mix, isn't it? It's incredibly, it's inviting and intoxicating and makes you feel great.
Yeah, because
And it stays with you. It never leaves. I mean, every time I hear Life on Mars, I'm transported.
yeah, I know. Same here. It's that same pleasure that woke
Yeah.
up when I heard those songs is right there waiting, and it's like a balm. It's better than any antidepressant. In fact, I remember a psychiatrist telling me that they can always spot when something's up if someone changes their hair. And I thought that was so interesting. And can you see someone's insecurity in how they're wearing their hair?
I think I see insecurity in not so much how they're wearing their hair, but how they're not wearing their hair.
Mm-hmm.
I think people use their hair, in my experience, I see people using their hair as in many different ways. Some people use it as a shield. Well, we all do. We use it as a shield or as armor. I mean, it can be two very opposite things, or as to make a statement. I think people use it. It's a useful tool, your hair. It's a very, I mean, it does tell a lot of stories. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't use their hair, don't know the power of their hair, and they don't use it at all, and that makes me sad.
Yeah. In what way can you give an example of that?
I think a lot of people get stuck in not doing anything with their hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've worked with a lot of amazing people. And I remember when I did a couple of years with Lady Gaga about 10 years ago when she was kind of first on the radar. And I remember at the time thinking, wow, this woman completely uses her hair in a way that I have never seen anyone use it before, because she would just go from wig to wig to wig 6 times a day, and outfits changing, because she tapped into the power of the internet and the social media, the power of social media, and the power of sending out all those different images multiple times a day, because she saw how things had changed, and this monster of social media needed to be fed. And I think she used the word monster very well as well. And I thought that was very, very clever of her to do that.
Yeah, she did it with a kind of freedom as well. It didn't seem
she meant it. It came from her heart.
Yeah.
It was something that she felt. And every look was really thought through. It wasn't, nothing was an afterthought.
Yeah, it was very like performance art almost.
It was performance art, and I think she raised the bar, and she changed the way other artists had to perform from then on.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough just to have one look and stay with it.
Gosh, she really did raise the bar high. Yeah. It's also, people say hairdressers receive people's secrets, and how do you reinvent someone's identity? What's the first clue to getting in there?
I think for me, it's about, well, the relationship with your hair and a client or a celebrity or whoever's hair you're doing, it has to be based on trust. And I think if someone wants a dramatic change, I have to really get the message that they really mean it, that it isn't a whim, or it can be a whim sometimes, but they mean it. They really want it. They're not going to regret it, you know? So there has to be a conversation. And I think I have to understand why they're doing something, the reason, because your hair, once it's gone, it's not coming back, you know, if you're going to do a haircut. So, and I think you pick up signals. So you quickly understand, this person really wants to do this. And sometimes you'll have the conversation, you don't really want to do this, do you? You just want to talk about it. And you realize that that's the case.
Yeah.
So it's it's just something you pick up with experience.
But you must have an incredible sixth sense of reading someone, because, you know, this kind of ability to know when someone wants you to take charge of them. Like, I mean, that sounds like the thing that happened with Princess Diana when she kind of invited you to suggest changing her image and you just did it.
Well, I'm going to contradict myself here, because that was the first time I'd ever met her. We did
God,
that haircut.
really?
And I'd only met her for a couple of hours. Didn't know anything about her at all, apart from what I'd read, but I didn't read much because I wasn't really paying much attention. And it was 1990. We were on a shoot doing portraits of the young royals for Vogue, and she was the last person on the shoot. And she came into the studio, charmed us all immediately, because she was incredibly charming, and just killed us all with a smile immediately, disarmed us all, and we were all putty in her hands. And we had a couple of hours of shooting, and we laughed a lot. It was with Patrick Demarchelier, and Patrick's French is almost indecipherable. He's English, sorry, because he's French, and I was translating. I was kind of, and it was funny. Very, very funny, as it always was. And we did some gorgeous images. One of her sitting on the floor. It was the first time she had been photographed in such a kind of relaxed, less stuffy, less royal portraiture. Patrick had her on the floor, laughing, and I've got that picture now as a fridge magnet I found, which God, I love. So she's on my fridge. Good. And I made her hair look short. And after the shoot, because she had the big fluffy perm of the 80s, which was, you know, very of that time, but this was 1990. Things had changed, and I said, she said, do what you want to do. So I made her hair look as if it was short with her tiara on. And at the end of the shoot, she said, what would you do if I gave you free? I just said, do whatever you want. And I said, honestly, I would just cut it all off, get rid of the 80s and move into the 90s, because we were heading into sort of the sort of minimalist power dressing of the 90s. We'd gone from the frou-frou 80s. This was 1990, and we were working for Vogue, and Vogue was about the business power woman. Yeah. So I didn't know anything about her background, but in retrospect, she was heading for a divorce and her life was changing. But I didn't know any of that. But I knew from the way she was talking that she wanted a change. And we cut her hair off there and then after the shoot. And then I spent the next 7 years looking after her hair. Yeah, so that was a fortuitous decision.
How incredible. I suppose it's so interesting that she was going, you know, heading into this complete change and transformation of her life, and you came along and she realized you were a trustworthy person, that she could begin this new phase. I mean, I'm making all this up, but it's just...
But it's funny you say that, because a couple of years ago, a friend of mine sent me a recording, because there'd been a documentary on TV, and they had some recordings of her speaking with her voice coach, and that he had made into a documentary. And in that recording, she actually says that her life changed when I cut her hair.
Wow.
And
God.
that was, honestly, that's almost 30 years after her death. That was the first time I knew she liked her hair, and but that was the first time it really kind of deeply resonated with me of how much that haircut had affected her.
That's so moving, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a powerful thing, hair. It mustn't be underestimated.
But you have this ability to be with people at these key moments in their life because of how you move their identity into a place that sort of catches up with almost their emotional courage, that they're setting out on a new journey, and you just have this kind of instinct, and I imagine that's why you've stayed at the top of your game all this time. And when I watch you, I remember coming to a shoot that when Kate Moss was just doing Topshop, and we were all in this basement. I don't know what I was doing there, but I was just hanging around. And I saw her sitting there, and you appeared, and something completely changed. It was like a molecular change in the atmosphere, and she just settled and sprang to life, and it was about you and her. And then you started doing her hair, and it was fantastic. And I never forgot that. It's like I can feel it now as I'm remembering it, how this kind of magnetic thing happened between you. And you've worked with all the supermodels and great actresses like Nicole Kidman and Kate Blanchett, and Kate Moss said you've done even more Vogue covers than she has. I think you've done 150 or something.
Yeah, I think it was well over that now.
Oh my God.
At the last count.
But the thing you have this way of always knowing what is modern. And I wondered, what does modern mean to you?
What does modern mean to me? It doesn't mean just one thing. I think it means what's right for that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
I think it's because hair isn't about something that looks good. It's about something that makes you feel something. And I think modern hair is something that makes you feel really good about yourself. It almost doesn't matter what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's something that makes you feel good about yourself, so it gives you confidence.
Yeah, so I suppose it's the whole thing about fashion is when you can find the things that work for you, you can forget about yourself.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
with hair, it's the same thing, almost more so, because you can literally go out in your pajamas and your hair
I always say that with actresses and models, we're seeing each other at, 6 o'clock in the morning when everyone is raw. So that person who sits in the chair, having just got out of bed with no makeup or hair or armor or shield, whatever you like, that character has to be built in that couple of hours where they're in your chair. So we, makeup, hair, wardrobe, we're all there to enable that person to become the person that they want to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Because I always remember Kate talking about, being backstage and saying the hairdressers and the makeup artists have your back, and thinking it's such a nerve-wracking situation that really, there's such a high level of pressure and expectation, and I wondered how do you deal with fear when it's it's on you?
I don't know. I think you have to work through it. It's like you have to get through it. You know that you have to. There has to be a result at the end of the day. So you're all going to have to get through this. So I think it's about collaboration. It's about all having each other's backs. It's not just a one-way street. It's about everyone working together to the same end.
I think you've got a touch of the Yoda though as well. You have this very calm demeanour, but it must be very hard won. And
I try to have a calm demeanour, but I'm probably like a duck, paddling furiously underneath this sort of, the smile. But I like to have fun. I like to laugh a lot, and I do. I guess my go-to thing is to try and make people laugh, trying to diffuse a situation.
Yeah, it's a very good technique because when you see someone else relax, you're kind of it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Kate Moss is rather good at cutting hair. Have you ever seen any of her handiwork?
Good, I'm not so sure. She loves doing it, but
I think she's brilliant.
yeah, I've never
at
had the
it.
pleasure, but I've seen the results, and the jury's out on that. On that one.
I saw her. I didn't see her literally do it, but this older man with very bouffant hair, and the next time he looked like 100 times better, and she said, "Oh yeah, I thinned it out or whatever."
Yeah. She's got a very good eye, as
She's
we know.
got a great knack. She knows
she
how
does.
to make people
She does.
look
She does.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd trust her, I must say.
I mean, she's cut my hair before. She got the clippers to my hair. Before.
Really, yeah. I love the way she takes over. You know, it's just so relaxing. You think, oh well, she's in charge now. And how did you deal with losing your own hair?
It wasn't a problem for me. My hair went slowly, so I never really had an issue. I mean, it went over the course of 20 years, really. I remember when I was in my late 30s, we were bleaching hair for Jenny Howarth. Jenny was a big model in the 80s, and we were dear friends, and we were bleaching Jenny's hair. And there was loads of bleach left over, so I did mine too. And I remember I had that for about a year because I knew I was about to lose it and I wouldn't be able to do it again. So that was my last hurrah with the bleached hair, and I loved it. I loved every minute of that year. It was great. And then it started to go, and it was slow, and it was fine. A friend of mine has recently suggested that I get a hair transplant because they're so good these days. But I think at this stage of the game, no, thank you. Maybe if I was 20 years younger, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that now.
It looks good though, because
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. You know, I'm all right.
I like bald heads, I must say, and I like bald patches, like that guy on White Lotus, Walton Goggins, I think, who has a much younger girlfriend in the series, and she says, "You're like that other guy. He's old, and he's got a bald patch. You've got a bald patch." And
I'm not loving this series. I've struggled with it.
I like those two.
Yeah, it hasn't grabbed me, this series. The other two series were amazing, but this one, I fell asleep the other night watching it. So that's a test.
I kind of quite like. I quite like that it's a little bit boring. I need that. I enjoy it. But and you worked on many of Vivienne Westwood's shows.
I did. I started with Vivienne like 91, something like that, and I worked with her.
Yeah, because she had all these.
She was gone. I loved Vivienne.
Really?
I mean, it was a great relationship. We understood each other. Because, as you know, Vivienne too, and she could be quite indecipherable, you know.
That's
her
right.
rants of how she wanted the hair and makeup for the shows could be, you'd kind of go, at first you go away thinking, what on earth was she talking about? But after a few seasons, you kind of picked up her vibe, you know. And she knew that I wouldn't have a meltdown, because quite often backstage, she would be running her hands through the hair, wiping the lipstick off, dude, and she knew that I wasn't fazed by that. So because I knew she knew what she was looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I worked for her, and
Yes,
I'd already
yeah.
left before you started, and because sometimes I remember her making this kind of shawl thing with tons of gathered ivory silk, but it was glove lining silk, which is so fine. You pick it up and you've snagged it even with the end of your fingers. And she made this thing and you couldn't tell which way it went on or anything. And she said, "I'm going to call this the mess." And it was so great. And it was a mess, but when it was on, it was just ravishing. And I wondered what kind of things she told you when she was...
Oh, there was one time she wanted... she showed me a drawing, a very old drawing of a man running down the stairs with his hair on fire. And she said, "That's what I'd like." So we coloured all these hair pieces into flames, and we did this sort of flame... And she had it herself too. She would often have the hair and makeup of the show. So she had her hair was in flames, and just before, and it was a difficult thing to do, time-consuming thing to do, and we made it perfect. And of course, she never wanted perfection, and I should have thought that. So just before they were going on, she took her hands and she messed the whole thing up, so they looked like they'd been dragged through a hedge, and she absolutely loved it. She absolutely loved it. So you know, what can you do?
Wow.
It was her show.
Yeah.
There was quite some of those amazing shows in the 90s, which went on for 40 minutes, were just incredible. They were absolutely mind-blowing when she had all the... I remember early on, Naomi and I persuading Linda and Christine, the big girls, to do her show, because she had just started showing in Paris. And it had always been English girls before, you know, Yasmin, and I think Yasmin and Naomi and I got the other girls to do it, and it kind of really elevated her shows into the stratosphere, really, because those girls just looked absolutely incredible in those wonderful, well, they were couture outfits, really, weren't they? Yeah.
I mean, that picture of Christy with that kind of frizzy, those two baobab trees almost.
Yeah, that was amazing. And Kate with her sort of little, she was holding a little bunny rabbit in one of them, which was just amazing. And there was one show that was sponsored by Magnum, and they all came on licking Magnum lollies.
Oh my God.
And it was just extraordinary, yeah.
Things were so much more wild in those days.
Yeah.
I mean, the order backstage there wasn't any.
It was chaos.
I don't know how it happened.
It just does, though, doesn't it? You just make it happen. And that, I guess that was really good training.
Yeah. I think what we know in the fashion business is how much crazy stuff, how much disorder there is, and how I'm always so impressed how people can take that and run with it and make some order out of it, and that order is beauty. You know, I mean, you're a master of that.
Well, it's that idea of collaboration, because it's not a single person. It's not a solitary craft. It's a huge team effort. It's all about the team. It only works if everyone's doing their thing.
Do you have a favourite show that you worked on?
I've been lucky to work on hundreds of incredible shows with people like Vivienne. I spent 12 years with Karl at Chanel and Fendi, which was just absolutely incredible. And that was recent. I spent 15 years with Dries Van Noten doing amazing things. I've been lucky enough to work with incredible creative talent, so it kind of rubs off on you, hopefully.
Because Karl was just a byword in fashion. It's so strange that, I mean, I remember when I was coming up originally with the questions for Fashion Neurosis a few years ago, when I was developing it, one of my repetitive questions was going to be, do you have any anecdotes about Karl Lagerfeld? Because he was like an alter ego for, you know, not just for fashion people, but he was like an avatar, and he sort of was one in the end. And do you have any anecdotes about Karl Lagerfeld?
About Karl? Oh God, so many anecdotes about Karl. He was so funny, and he was so welcoming, because, you know, my first few jobs with Chanel, it's quite intimidating to be in his incredible studio with the 40-foot high ceilings full of books, you know, and all these amazing creative talents around. But he makes everyone feel welcome. He goes around and says good morning to all the assistants and goodbye, big kisses, and he was incredibly warm and very, very, very clever and very funny. So every job with him was, it was an absolute joy. And the funny thing is, we did 6 shows a year for Chanel. We did, I think, 4 for Fendi. And We never did the same thing twice. If it was a ponytail, it would be on a different side, or it would be a double ponytail or something. It was, he loved the idea that you never did anything twice. And he never spoke about a job after it was finished. A show, a job, anything. You never heard of it again. He moved on to the next thing. And that's something I took from him, the constantly moving forward. I mean, it was quite incredible. He never mentioned yesterday's news. It was all about today and tomorrow.
Wow. Because I used to hear stories of him suddenly deciding someone was out, someone who'd been close to him, and then they were cast out of the Garden of Eden. It was quite a devastating thing to experience.
When I worked with it, it was towards the end of his life, so I think he had probably mellowed out a bit. But yes, I did hear those stories too. Yeah.
Yes. And if you fancy someone and you don't like something they're wearing, does it kill your attraction to them?
Oh God, my days of fancying are long gone.
No.
I think what someone's wearing is, I hate to admit it, but yes, it is very important to me. If someone's wearing, how can I say this? I don't know. Shoes. If someone's wearing awful shoes, I find it really off-putting.
What are awful shoes to you?
Awful, cheap, nasty shoes.
Like trendy shoes?
Unflattering shoes, cheap shoes. Cheap shoes are awful, I think. cheap shoes that look cheap are awful on anyone. I guess it's from me being very head conscious. I look at faces and hair, and then I guess the next thing you go to is the feet. And I think the feet are really important. I can be very put off by someone's footwear.
Because it's
estate agent footwear.
Oh, that's very good. That's so good. Estate. Yeah. There's a particular bad suit and bad shoes that are certain.
The suit's fine. It's the shoes.
Right.
It's the shoes.
Yeah.
You can't get away with bad shoes.
No, it's true. And a good shoe really makes you notice.
Oh, a good shoe just elevates. It changes the way you walk. It elevates everything.
And hair's, such a personal thing. It is clothes in its way. And what about disasters? Has anyone been incredibly upset with something that you've done?
God, not that I know about, probably.
I mean, you're such a master. You just have this, it's like watching a chef. You just conjure up these things, and you're such a maker, watching how you shape these incredible kind of beautiful creations that you make with people's hair.
The reason for that is I use my hands as tools, really. When I first came to London, I came to London on holiday, and a friend of a friend was the PR at Bieber in High Street, Ken. And within 2 years, I had moved to London, and because I'd just fallen in love with that whole London Bieber look of the early 70s. It was coming from a mining village where there was only 3 days electricity a week. We were in that sort of world, and everything was bleak. And London was pretty bleak, but there were these sort of little blips of light like Bieber and Fiorucci, and that kind of world was opening up, and I saw the bright lights, and I ended up working. I had a few jobs. I worked in Miss Selfridge, which had a hairdressing salon. I worked in Elizabeth Arden hairdressing salon, and then I ended up in a place called Molton Brown, which was Molton Brown. You probably know as hand wash, but it was the coolest hairdressing salon in London in the 70s. It was in South Molton Street, and the building is still there. It's a beautiful listed building with a curved window. When South Molton Street was the happening place in London, after the King's Road,
Yeah.
when the King's Road was kind of on the wane. And Mrs. B had opened Brown's. Mrs. B's daughter married a hairdresser called Michael, and they opened Molton Brown. So Molton Brown was the first place to do organic hair products.
Really?
Yeah,
I never knew
they
that.
made them all themselves, and we were taught to be the opposite of Vidal Sassoon. So we weren't allowed to use electrical equipment. We had to dry the hair with towels in our hands.
Gosh.
So everything had to work in a much more natural way. So I learned to really rely on my hands and not rely on electrical tools. So that I learned that very, very basic thing there when I first started, and that has kind of informed my work ever since. I like to get my hands in.
Yeah. God, that's so good. Because if you can do, any idea that can travel from the brain down the arm and into something is, every single time you repeat that, it's an education, a new idea seems to come out of it.
It does, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
In a way, technology really interferes with that process. And I imagine it's harder for a young person to make the leap from having a fantasy about doing something or being someone to actually
but
making
you say technology interferes with that. But I take another view on that. I'm so glad I learned that. I learned to do that. So I just absolutely am fascinated by the new technology in hair dryers and tools and straightening irons and curlers. It's extraordinary what you can do with the right tools. I remember when straighteners first became, when I got my hands on the first pair of straighteners, it would have been the 90s, I'm sure, and they were great big flat things with wooden handles that you got in Italy. They look like torture contraptions now, looking back. But it changed my life. Suddenly, you didn't have to, iron hair with an iron or blow dry it for hours. Suddenly these straight went whoosh and they straightened. I think technology is an incredible thing if you use it properly.
Yeah, I suppose you can mold it yourself. In the end,
it's incredible.
The person who is the creative, and any tool is another way of extending that.
Yeah.
And you've talked about liking to go out of your comfort zone. What does that look like to you now?
When I was 62, I launched a line of haircare products, which took me right out of my comfort zone. But I think as I've gotten older, I think it's really important to push myself out of my comfort zone. During COVID, I was 65 during COVID, and my 65th birthday on the second month of COVID, in May, in the COVID, when it was, peak COVID. And I remember thinking, I'm going to use this as an opportunity, because suddenly we weren't working. I was used to traveling 3 different places every week, and suddenly that was gone. And I actually liked it. And I thought, I'm going to look at this as an opportunity. And we'd had success with the 4 products I already had. That was all funded by me. And I just made these big decisions. Okay, we're going to get investment. I'm going to dive into the hair product and retail world. My mind opened up, and I thought, I don't want to go on for the rest of my life. What am I going to do? Doing, 3 fashion shoots a week, shows, which has been amazing for me. I love it. It's great. But I suddenly saw the end coming. There's an end to this.
Totally.
And I don't want to spend the next 10 years doing the same as I've done for the last 40 years. I want change. I want to move on. And I think Karl's thing was always in my mind about moving on to the next thing. And I think that it became about pushing myself to do things that I hadn't done before.
Yeah.
And that was in my personal life as well. So I started doing more adventure holidays. I've just been whitewater rafting and doing things that I hate to say, but it's not really bucket list. It's about new experiences.
Yeah.
And I think the new experiences are keeping me invigorated and keeping me young, keeping me fresh.
Yeah.
I got a dog.
It's so lovely listening to you talk about that, because I was reading, a friend of mine sent me this thing the other day about the Japanese artist Hokusai, who didn't really get going until he was 60. And then he talks all about these evolvement in his work and his art, and he did all his greatest work after the age of 60. And life is so exciting that there's not a moment to lose. The nearer
There's
the
not
end
a moment
comes.
to waste.
Yeah.
And I felt that I had been, listen, it's been the most incredible work in life. It's been amazing. I've been blessed and I love every minute of it. But I suddenly thought I suddenly became very aware of being on repeat, you know, and starting to think, I want to have new experiences. I want to have new adventures. I want to be stimulated in a different way. I'm 70 this year. And I feel great. I feel really good. I feel I have a lot of energy, and I have a renewed zest for life, if you like.
Yeah, because there's a lot of conditioning that as you get older, you're supposed to do less and less. But I find I want to do more and more. I feel exactly the same as you. I want new experiences. I don't want repetition. And I feel with my experience, I have a more courage to push through my, self-doubt, I suppose. And it's great, listening to you describe launching this whole product range. And
yeah, we have hair by sammcknight.com. We have a fantastic website that's where you can buy it, and there's lots of tutorials. There's a lot of information on there. We're in department stores, within top salons. We have a wide foreign distribution now, so we're doing quite well.
It's great. It's so gorgeous. I love the colours of the packaging. There's pale blue.
We wanted to
lilac.
bring a little joy back into the world of hair care.
Yeah.
And there had started to be a very much of a negative narrative in that hair care brands would tell you how bad your hair was and you needed this to fix it.
Right.
And I thought, most people who sit down in my chair, their hair isn't, they'll say, oh, my hair's terrible. It's not terrible. It's not as terrible as you think it is. There's a very easy way to fix it.
Right.
You know, so I wanted to bring a more positive vibe back to hair care. And we started with colour. We started with the colour of the packaging. So it's kind of inviting, and rather than being medicinal and scary, it's sort of there's a joy there.
Yeah, it's romantic. It's lovely. And also you have, on your Instagram, and you do these pictures with you in different wigs, which are very entertaining, and also amazing how to change a mood. Like, you put them on and you take these pictures and you play about a bit, and the whole thing is very uplifting. And I think any of those things to do with appearance are great, rather than the prescriptive thing. This is how to play, and this is how to enhance, and you can kind of mess about a bit.
I think hair is such a great tool. I keep saying that. I think hair it should be enjoyed. I think if you cut your hair, it will grow back. If you cut it, some people will torture themselves for 6 months about cutting a fringe. Now, you could have cut it and it would have grown back by now. And and sometimes people say, oh, what if I don't like it? But what if you do?
Yeah, exactly.
What if you do?
Do you take your hair skills and your kind of genius manner with your hands into your garden? Because you have a beautiful garden and you're very into your flowers and your growing things.
I think the garden for me, I have had my garden now for 15 years. I used to live in Maida Vale, and I would go in the summer and sit on a deck chair in the Rose Garden in Regent's Park of an evening and read a book. And I started to think, oh, maybe I could have my own garden. So I found a house with a great big garden, and have spent the last 15 years just absolutely, it's changed my life. I sow seeds, I grow my own vegetables, I watch the seasons slowly turn, which I absolutely love. It makes me very aware of time passing in a good way. And it's very different from being in a studio with 20, 30, 40 people. This is just me. It's a solitary hobby. Is it a hobby? It's a way of life now.
Yeah.
It's solitary. It's just me. And it's almost meditative. I used to love baking too, but I found baking was like that too. You had to concentrate, and it was just you. I couldn't do it with anyone else around.
Yeah.
And gardening's kind of taken over from the baking a bit.
Yeah. I know it's good to have some other type of action, I think, because that's very relaxing. And
I think that the gardening, it brings me peace, and it gives me hope, because there's always something growing and something to look forward to. Does that make sense? And something dies or something fades, and the peonies go back into the ground, and then they start appearing in February with their little red shoots, and now they're sort of 2 feet high, and it brings hope, really, that something will always be coming through.
yeah, it's a great thing to have something in place to remind you of the phases of things.
Yes, absolutely.
Things pass and then re-evolve. And are you involved in the haircuts for the homeless project?
I'm not hugely involved with haircuts and homeless, but I do everything I can to help them.
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is absolutely incredible. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing they're doing, and I'm full of admiration for them. And I wrote a foreword for the book that they did. So anything we can do to help them, we do. What they do is just wonderful. He's such an enigmatic person, and who works really, really hard. So I am always there to support them in whatever I can do.
It's a brilliant idea.
It's a fantastic idea, and I'm full of admiration for those guys. They're like nurses.
Yeah.
I think I would probably get so wrapped up in the personal lives of people. I'm not sure I could do it. I remember I got to travel with Princess Diana, and she took me to the most incredible places. We went to Mother Teresa's in Calcutta. We went to refugee camps on the Afghan border, where kids who'd had their arms and legs blown off by landmines. One of the newsreaders, I can't remember which one it was, opened a limb fitting center. So she went to draw attention to that. And I honestly, I was in bits. I was in tears around the back of the building. It affected me so much. So I quite emotional in that respect. And that's why I'm full of admiration for those guys who do their haircuts for the homeless. It just makes you feel good. They feel great, and they've had some attention. They've had someone speak to them in a normal way.
And touch them as well.
And touch them. Yeah. Touch is important too. Yeah,
so important. And I think fashion is a great Trojan horse, actually, that people in the fashion business are quite effective in being able to, care for people in the community and in the greater world, just because we're quite sort of matter of fact about this could make someone feel better, rather than over kind of intellectualizing something or or being overwhelmed by the magnitude of something. What's good about people in our industry is we know this could be good here, let's do that, and then that kind of ripples into a bigger outcome and a bigger effect.
I think you've got me thinking. I need to push myself and get myself out there and get involved in that.
Well, you're quite proactive. I mean, you do a lot of things about making sure people are recognised, like even on shoots, people being credited, because in the business and in magazines, for years, the models were never credited. No, it was really hard to get a credit. And you're one of the people that has pioneered on Instagram that people's names everyone's tagged, and those things are everything about being seen and recognised and feeling valued and being valued, actually. And you're really good at that.
Well, I think I started to notice a few years ago, a general devaluation of what the creatives brought to the table on a fashion shoot. Because quite often you don't get paid for a lot of your work. Mm-hmm. The deal was always, if you worked for a magazine or something high profile, you would get a credit in return for your work, and that was almost the shop window for your work, which is fine. And it was that was the deal for decades. And as time has gone on, so magazines have kind of lost their importance as to how they used to be, and the importance has shifted to online. I noticed that people weren't giving credit to the beauty teams on their online content, and these people still hadn't been paid for their work. Now, online is the currency for a young hair or makeup artists, for people to see their work. And if the people they worked for are not crediting them, then that original deal is broken. There is no deal anymore. And it happened a few times, and then I started to see it's happening a lot. It's almost become systematic. It's almost become the policy.
God.
And I don't know. I'm not going to stay. So the thing is, I have a voice. I have a platform. I'm going to use it. So I started to question. I'd start to say, well, you didn't credit the hair and makeup. It'd be nice to see the hair and makeup credits. Da, 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 da. And they wouldn't reply. So I did a few posts, and I got the most incredible response. I did a few, not mean, not nasty, not bitchy, just stating facts, stating how it was, stating what I've just said here, what the deal was, and got an incredible response from people. And I realized this problem is far bigger than I thought. So I set about trying to find a way to form a union. Cut to Back to, which is the union for behind the scenes in the film world, have now opened up to the fashion world, which they had never been open to before. Because I think, and people hear union and they think, oh, militants, this is going to be difficult. Not at all. It's a protection. It's organization. And it's setting basic rules and basic conditions. And I think this is just the beginning. So I'm hoping it's going to go from strength to strength and be the norm, because it's the Wild West out there,
Yeah. Oh, well, it's fantastic you're doing that. And it's always, I think people go into a lull, and then somebody like you says these things, and it just brings everyone to life, and it's fun to.
I think for me, I'm just speaking up for people who have no voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had an amazing career. I don't care if I upset people by saying it. It has to be said, and I think change will come.
Yeah.
Change is necessary, and change will come, and the change will be for the good for everyone. Everyone will know the ground rules,
Well, thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
Being on Fashion Neurosis. It's been intriguing and fascinating.
Hopefully I'm not too neurotic.
Oh, not at all. You seem remarkably unneurotic. I think you've transcended it. Thank you so much.
I got away with it.